Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had a copy quirk like Monoma. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and broken dreams. 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya sat on the edge of a plastic chair that squeaked every time he swung his legs, which was often. His red shoes, All Might themed naturally, barely touched the floor. Next to him, his mother clutched her purse with white knuckles, her forced smile doing little to hide the tension radiating from her small frame. Midoriya Izuku? A nurse called from the doorway, her voice cutting through the low murmur of other families waiting for their own verdicts. Inko Midoriya stood first, smoothing down her skirt with trembling hands. Come on, Izuku. It's time. The walk down the hallway felt endless. Izuku counted the tiles. White, white, green, white, white, green, trying to calm the hurricane of excitement and terror swirling in his stomach. Today was the day. Today he would find out what kind of hero he could become. Dr. Tsubasa's office was exactly what you'd expect from a quirk specialist. Walls covered in anatomical charts showing various mutation types. A small television in the corner playing a muted video about quirk development in early childhood, and a desk cluttered with medical journals and coffee-stained papers. The doctor himself was unremarkable, middle-aged, mustached, with the kind of forgettable face that would blend into any crowd. Please have a seat, Dr. Tsubasa said, gesturing to the chairs across from his desk. He pulled up something on his computer, squinting at the screen through thick glasses. I have young Izuku's test results here. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. This was, well, the doctor began, and that single word carried enough weight to crack the foundation of a 4-year-old's world. This is unusual. Inko's hand found Izuku's, squeezing gently. Unusual how? Dr. Tsubasa turned his monitor so they could see. On the screen was an X-ray of a foot, Izuku's foot, with a small arrow pointing to a specific joint. Your son does have a quirk. The absence of the extra toe joint confirms it. However, he paused, seeming to search for the right words. Based on our comprehensive testing, his quirk appears to be a form of temporary quirk replication. Replication? Inko echoed. He can copy other people's quirks, the doctor explained, pulling out a tablet and showing them a series of test results. But there are severe limitations. First, he requires direct skin-to-skin contact with the quirk user. Second, the copied quirk only remains active for approximately 5 minutes. Third, he can only hold one copied quirk at a time. Izuku's eyes widened. I can copy quirks? Like All Might's super strength? Or Endeavor's fire? Theoretically, yes. Dr. Tsubasa's expression grew grave. But practically speaking, he set down the tablet and folded his hands. Mrs. Midoriya, I'll be frank. Without willing participants to let him copy their quirks, without regular access to various quirk types for practice, your son is, for all intents and purposes, quirkless. The word hit like a physical blow. Quirkless. The death knell for any aspiring hero. But he has a quirk. Inko protested, her voice rising. You just said, a quirk that requires other people's cooperation to function, the doctor interrupted gently. How many people do you think will willingly let a child copy their abilities? How many heroes would risk their techniques being replicated, even temporarily? And even if they did, 5 minutes isn't enough time to accomplish anything meaningful. Izuku stared at his hands, small, unmarked, ordinary hands that could apparently do something extraordinary but ultimately useless. The All Might poster on the doctor's wall seemed to mock him, that brilliant smile now feeling distant and unreachable. It's like being given a key, Dr. Tsubasa continued, his tone sympathetic but clinical, but being told you can only use it on doors that others unlock for you first, and only for 5 minutes at a time. I'm sorry, but I have to recommend you start considering alternative career paths for young Izuku. The rest of the appointment blurred together. Pamphlets about quirkless support groups and non-hero career opportunities were pressed into Inko's shaking hands. Izuku caught fragments of conversation, still lived fulfilling lives and many successful quirkless individuals. But the words washed over him like water over stone, leaving no impression. The drive home was silent except for Inko's occasional sniffle. Izuku watched the city pass by through the car window, seeing heroes leap between buildings and soar through the sky. Each one might as well have been on another planet. That night, Izuku stood in front of his bedroom mirror, all might action figures arranged on the dresser like an audience. He pressed his palm against the cool glass, watching his reflection do the same. "Copy," he whispered. Nothing happened. Of course nothing happened. There was no Quirk to copy from his own reflection. He tried again, pressing harder. "Copy!" Still nothing. "Copy!" he shouted, and his mother appeared in the doorway, concern etched across her face. "Izuku, honey, I want to try." The words tumbled out in a rush. "Let me copy your Quirk, Mom." "Please!" Inko's face crumpled. She crossed the room and pulled him into a hug, her own small form shaking. "Oh, Izuku. I'm so sorry." It took him a moment to understand. His mother's Quirk was small object attraction, useful for finding lost keys or picking up dropped items, but hardly hero material. And even if he could copy it, 5 minutes, he whispered into her shoulder. It would only last 5 minutes. They stayed like that for a long time, mother and son united in their shared heartbreak, while All Might smiled down at them from every corner of the room. School became a battlefield where Izuku was always unarmed. "Hey, Deku!" Bakugo Katsuki's voice cracked like one of his explosions across the playground. "Heard you got your Quirk results." Izuku hunched his shoulders, trying to make himself smaller as he sat on the swing. He'd been dreading this moment for 3 days, ever since the appointment. "Yeah, so?" Bakugo stalked closer, his gang of followers trailing behind like hyenas scenting weakness. "What did you get? Some lame Quirk to match your lame self?" Izuku's voice caught. How could he explain? "I can copy Quirks." For a moment, silence. Then Bakugo's face twisted into something ugly. "Copy? You mean you steal other people's Quirks?" "No. It's not stealing, it's just, that's sick." One of Bakugo's followers chimed in. "Like a parasite, a leech." Another added. "It only lasts 5 minutes, Izuku said desperately. "And I need to touch." The explosion came without warning. Small, controlled, but enough to knock Izuku off the swing and into the dirt. His palms scraped against the ground, and he felt tears prick at his eyes, not from the pain, but from the humiliation. "Don't you ever think about copying my Quirk," Bakugo snarled, smoke rising from his palms. "You hear me, Deku? You try to touch me, and I'll blow your arms off." "Kaken, I wouldn't. You're worse than Quirkless." Bakugo spat. "At least Quirkless people are just useless." "You're a thief. A copycat. A fake." The words burrowed deep, finding every insecurity and magnifying it. Izuku stayed on the ground even after Bakugo and his gang left, dirt under his fingernails and shame burning in his chest. That became the pattern. Word spread quickly about the boy with the parasite Quirk, and suddenly everyone kept their distance. During Quirk training exercises, partners were mysteriously unavailable. At lunch, students would shift away if he sat too close. Even the teachers seemed uncomfortable, always watching to make sure he kept his hands to himself. "It's for everyone's safety," his homeroom teacher explained after pulling him aside one day. "We can't have you accidentally copying someone's Quirk without permission. There could be liability issues." Liability issues. As if he were a walking lawsuit waiting to happen. The only time anyone willingly interacted with him was to mock or hurt him. Bakugo's explosions became a daily reminder of his place in the hierarchy, below even the Quirkless kids, who at least weren't seen as potential threats. Years passed in a blur of isolation and notebooks. If he couldn't practice with Quirks, Izuku reasoned, he could at least study them. He filled journal after journal with observations, theories, and analysis. Hero fights on the news became his classroom. He'd pause and rewind videos, studying how each hero used their Quirk, imagining how he would use it if he could just touch them for a moment. His mother watched him with growing concern. "Izuku, honey, maybe you should. I'm going to be a hero, Mom." He'd say it every time, like a mantra, like a prayer. "I'll find a way." But even he was starting to doubt. By the time Izuku reached his final year of middle school, he'd become a ghost haunting his own life. He moved through the hallways like smoke, careful never to brush against anyone, never to make contact. His hands were always in his pockets or clutching his notebook, a self-imposed prison to make others feel safe. The career counseling form sat on his desk like an accusation. Around him, his classmates filled theirs out with confidence. Hero course applications for most, support companies and civilian tracks for others. Izuku stared at the blank paper, pen trembling in his hand. "All right, I'll collect these now," the teacher announced, moving between the desks. He paused at Izuku's, frowning at the single line written there. "UA Hero Course? Midoriya, we've discussed this. Everyone's saying they're gonna try for UA." Bakugo's voice cut through the classroom chatter. "But Deku? That's rich." The laughter that followed was familiar, almost comfortable in its cruelty. Izuku kept his eyes down, watching ink bleed from his pen onto the paper. "He can't even use his quirk," someone called out, probably hoping to copy someone else's test answers. As if Yui would accept a quirk thief. The teacher cleared his throat, but it was a half-hearted attempt at maintaining order. Even he seemed to agree with the sentiment. "Midoriya, perhaps you should consider a more realistic option." "I can be a hero," Izuku said quietly, but his voice carried. "My quirk is useless without other people." Bakugo slammed his hand on his desk, small explosions popping. "Face it, Deku. You're worse than quirkless. At least they know where they stand. You're just a wannabe, a copycat, a fake hero playing pretend." The words shouldn't have hurt. He'd heard variations of them for over a decade. But something about the timing, the public nature of it, the way even the teacher didn't disagree, something inside Izuku cracked. After school, he found himself on the roof. Not for any dramatic reason, he just needed air, needed space, needed to be away from eyes that saw him as either a threat or a joke. His latest notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future No. 13, weighed heavy in his bag. He pulled it out, flipping through pages of carefully documented quirk studies. Each one represented hours of work, of hope, of desperate belief that knowledge could somehow make up for opportunity. "Maybe they're right," he whispered to the empty sky. "Maybe I am just playing pretend." The notebook slipped from his fingers, caught by a sudden gust of wind. He lunged for it, managing to grab it before it could fly away, and that's when he saw it, smoke rising from a street several blocks away. The distinctive sound of explosions and sirens filled the air. A villain attack. Without thinking, Izuku ran. Not away from danger like a sensible person, but toward it. His feet knew the way. He traced these paths dozens of times, chasing hero battles like a moth to flame. By the time he arrived, a crowd had already formed. The villain was like something out of a nightmare, a massive, shifting mass of sludge that seemed to absorb everything it touched. Heroes stood at the perimeter, but none moved to engage. "The villain's too fluid," someone in the crowd explained. "Physical attacks just pass right through." "Where's someone with a freezing quirk?" "On the way, but..." A scream cut through the speculation. The sludge villain had someone, a hostage trapped within its body, only their head visible above the murky surface. Izuku's blood ran cold as he recognized the spiky blonde hair, the red eyes wide with something he'd never seen in them before. Fear. Bakugo was afraid. "Someone do something!" a woman cried. "We can't!" One of the heroes, Death Arms, Izuku's mind automatically supplied, shouted back. "Our quirks aren't suited for this. We have to wait for backup." Wait. They were going to wait while Bakugo suffocated. Izuku's feet moved before his brain could catch up. He burst through the crowd, past the police line, ignoring the shouts behind him. All he could see was Bakugo's face turning blue, eyes rolling back. "Kid, no!" A hero's hand reached for him, but Izuku twisted away. He couldn't copy a quirk to help. He couldn't punch the villain away or freeze it solid. But he could. His notebook flew through the air, pages fluttering like wings. It struck the sludge villain in what might have been its eye, causing it to rear back in surprise. The grip on Bakugo loosened for just a moment. "Kaken!" Izuku grabbed Bakugo's hand, skin-to-skin contact, and pulled with every ounce of strength in his quirkless body. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then Bakugo's quirk flooded through him like liquid fire. Izuku had imagined what explosion would feel like, had theorized and analyzed and dreamed. The reality was overwhelming, nitroglycerin-like sweat beading on his palms, power building like pressure in a shaken soda can. Let go! Izuku screamed, not at Bakugo but at the villain, and released the biggest explosion he could manage. The blast wasn't controlled or precise like Bakugo's practiced attacks. It was raw, desperate, and wild. But it was enough. The sludge villain recoiled, losing cohesion, and Bakugo tumbled free. They hit the ground hard, Izuku's copied quirk already fading. 5 minutes. He'd had explosion for less than 30 seconds. What the hell? Bakugo started. But then the real heroes moved in, finally able to act with the hostage clear. In the chaos that followed, the villain's capture, the medics checking them over, the crowd's mixture of cheers and scoldings, Izuku found himself face to face with death arms. That was reckless! The hero boomed. You could have been killed. A kid with a quirk like yours has no business. I couldn't just watch. The words came out steadier than Izuku felt. Heroes save people. That's what it means to be a hero, right? Death Arms opened his mouth, closed it, then shook his head. Just, don't do it again. As the heroes dispersed and the crowd thinned, Izuku found himself alone with Bakugo. They stood awkwardly, either quite meeting the other's eyes. I didn't need your help, Bakugo said finally, but the usual venom was missing. I know. And you copied my quirk without permission. I know. That's violating Deku. Having someone else use your quirk, even for a few seconds. Bakugo's hands clenched and unclenched. It's like someone wearing your skin. Izuku flinched. He'd never thought of it that way. I'm sorry. You were dying, Kaken. I would have been fine. They both knew it was a lie. Bakugo turned to leave, then paused. Your quirk isn't useless, he said quietly, so quietly Izuku almost missed it. It's just creepy. And invasive. And you better not ever use it on me again without asking. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't friendship. But it was something. Izuku walked home in a daze, his mind replaying the sensation of holding someone else's quirk. The pre-dawn air bit at Izuku's exposed skin as he jogged through the empty streets of Mizurufu. His breath came out in small puffs of vapor, each exhalation marking another step in his 10-month journey. The city slept around him, but he was wide awake, muscles burning with familiar pain that had become almost comforting. 10 months since that day. 10 months since All Might, had found him on that roof after the sludge villain incident, coughing blood and looking nothing like the symbol of peace. 10 months since those terrible, wonderful words, young man, you too can become a hero. Izuku's foot caught on an uneven piece of pavement, and he stumbled, barely catching himself. Even his clumsiness couldn't dampen the memory of that moment. All Might's skeletal hand on his shoulder, the truth about One for All, the offer that changed everything. Except All Might couldn't give him One for All. Not to someone with a copy quirk. Your body isn't the only issue, All Might had explained during one of their training sessions. One for All is a quirk that stockpiles power. If you copied it, even for 5 minutes, the sudden influx and loss could destroy your body. And we don't know how One for All would react to being replicated. It might resist. So instead, All Might had trained him. Pushed his body to its limits and beyond. Taught him to think strategically, to analyze opponents, to turn his useless quirk into something formidable. Your quirk is not about the power you copy, All Might had said, watching Izuku do his 500th squat. It's about understanding. In 5 minutes you must become someone else, think like them, move like them. That requires more than strength, it requires empathy and intelligence. Izuku rounded the corner to Dagoba Beach, where mountains of trash still littered the sand despite his months of cleaning. He'd cleared maybe a third of it. Without a strength quirk, the work was grueling and slow. But each refrigerator hauled, each car part dragged away, had built muscle and endurance he never had before. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon when he arrived home, sweat-soaked and exhausted. His mother was already awake, preparing breakfast and his specially designed gear. The support company delivered these yesterday, Inko said, gesturing to a pair of sleek black gloves on the kitchen table. I still don't understand how we afforded them. Izuku picked up the gloves, running his fingers over the specialized material. They were his design, sketched out in one of his notebooks, and somehow made reality. The palms were lined with a special conductive fabric that enhanced skin-to-skin contact, while the fingers had retractable tips for quick touches. More importantly, they contained a timer mechanism that would vibrate when his 5 minutes were nearly up. All Might has connections, Izuku said vaguely, not mentioning the hours he'd spent cleaning illegal dumping sites for the company's owner in exchange for the custom work. His mother watched him with that particular mixture of pride and worry she'd perfected over the years. Izuku, about today, I know what you're going to say. He pulled on the gloves, flexing his fingers to test the fit. It's dangerous. I might not pass. I should have backup plans. Actually, Inko said softly, I was going to say that I'm proud of you. No matter what happens. The words hit harder than any of Bakugo's explosions ever had. Yue's gates loomed before him like the entrance to another world. Izuku stood among hundreds of other applicants, each buzzing with nervous energy and barely contained quirks. Someone nearby had engines in their calves. He could hear the subtle rumbling. Another girl seemed to be floating slightly, her feet barely touching the ground. So many quirks. So many possibilities. Izuku's hands twitched inside his gloves. He'd made a plan, studied the entrance exam format obsessively. The practical portion was straightforward: destroy robots, earn points. But with his quirk, excuse me, he turned to find a girl with brown hair and a round face standing behind him, looking slightly green. Are you okay? He asked automatically. Just nervous. She laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. I might have overdone it with the coffee this morning. I'm Uraraka Ochako, Midoriya Izuku. He noticed she was swaying slightly. Do you need to sit down? No, she stumbled, and instinctively Izuku reached out to steady her. The moment his glove made contact with her arm, he felt it. A strange lightness, like gravity, had suddenly become negotiable. His quirk activated automatically, drinking in the sensation of her zero gravity like a parched man finding water. Oh! Uraraka jerked back, eyes wide. Did you just— I'm sorry! Izuku raised his hands, horrified. I didn't mean to. My quirk, it activates on contact and You copied my quirk? She didn't sound angry, just surprised. That's amazing. What's it feel like? Izuku blinked. In 10 years, no one had ever asked him that. Like I could float away if I'm not careful. Like gravity is more of a suggestion than a law. She beamed. That's exactly it. Oh, but I should warn you, if you use it too much, you might get nauseous. It's the inner ear thing, you know? Before he could respond, a sharp voice cut through the crowd. Would you two please move? Some of us are trying to get to the exam. Izuku turned to see a tall boy with glasses and in severe expression. Everything about him screamed precision, from his perfectly pressed uniform to the way he stood at exact right angles. Of course. Sorry. Izuku stepped aside, accidentally brushing against the boy's hand as he passed. Another quirk flooded through him, engines, but not in his legs. His arms felt strange, mechanical, powerful. The previous lightness of zero gravity vanished, replaced by this new sensation. The boy with glasses whirled around, eyes wide behind his frames. You! That was highly inappropriate. Copying someone's quirk without permission is— I'm sorry! Izuku was getting tired of apologizing. It's automatic on skin contact. I can't control the copying, just what I do with it after. The boy's lecture cut off, replaced by curiosity. Automatic? Fascinating. So you're constantly at risk of quirk overriding. That must make daily life quite challenging. You have no idea, Izuku muttered. I am Ida Tenya. The boy chopped his hand in a robotic gesture. And I apologize for my harsh words. I didn't realize your quirk's nature, Midoriya Izuku. And it's fine. Most people react worse. A loud voice boomed across the courtyard. Welcome, future heroes, to UA's entrance exam. President Mike stood at the front, his hair defying gravity and his smile visible even from a distance. The crowd pressed forward, and Izuku found himself sandwiched between Uraraka and Ida, hyper-aware of every potential contact. The written exam passed in a blur. Izuku's months of study paid off: hero law, mathematics, modern literature. His pencil flew across the pages, muscle memory from countless practice tests guiding him. Around him, other students struggled and sweated, but his mind was already on the practical portion. When they were divided into groups for the practical exam, Izuku found himself separated from both Uraraka and Ida. His group was led to testing ground B, a massive urban environment that looked like a city in miniature. "All right, listeners." Present Mick's voice echoed from speakers mounted throughout the area. "Here's the deal. You'll be fighting robot villains. 1 point for easy ones, 2 points for medium, 3 points for hard. You have 10 minutes to rack up as many points as possible." Izuku stretched, feeling the engines in his arms from his brief contact with Ida. The timer in his glove showed 3 minutes remaining on that quirk. He needed to be strategic. "Oh, and one more thing," Present Mike added. "There's a 0-pointer robot out there too. Not worth any points, so I'd avoid it if I were you." A buzzer sounded, and chaos erupted. Students rushed forward, quirks blazing. Izuku hung back for a moment, observing. A boy with a tail used it to vault over buildings. A girl with vines for hair entangled robots left and right. Someone else seemed to be shooting lasers from their navel. So many quirks. So many options. Izuku moved, keeping to the edges of the main combat. He needed to be smart about this. His gloves let him make quick contact, but he had to choose his targets carefully. A 1-pointer rounded the corner, its single eye focusing on him. Izuku activated Ida's quirk, or rather, his copy of it. Engines roared to life in his arms, and he punched forward with mechanical force. The robot crumpled like paper. 1 point, he muttered, already moving. His timer vibrated. 30 seconds left on engine. He spotted another applicant, a boy with multiple arms, destroying a 2-pointer. Izuku darted close, letting his hand brush against the boy's shoulder as he passed. 4 more arms sprouted from his torso, the sensation bizarre and disorienting, but he adapted. That was what 10 months of training had given him, not just strength, but adaptability. A 3-pointer emerged from a building, targeting a girl who'd been separated from the main group. Izuku didn't think, just moved. 6 arms working in concert, he grappled the robot and literally tore it apart. "Thanks," the girl called, but Izuku was already gone, hunting his next target. The pattern continued. Touch, copy, adapt, destroy. He cycled through quirks like a playlist. Hardening skin from a spiky-haired boy, acid from a pink girl, electricity from a blonde with a black streak. Each quirk lasted only 5 minutes, but Izuku made those minutes count. He'd racked up maybe 20 points when the ground shook. The 0-pointer was massive, towering over the fake buildings like something out of a kaiju movie. Students screamed and ran, the organized chaos becoming genuine panic. Izuku turned to flee with them, then heard it, a cry of pain. Uraraka was trapped, debris pinning her leg. The 0-pointer advanced, each step shaking more concrete loose. "Someone help her!" A student yelled, but no one stopped running. Izuku's current quirk, something about extending his fingers like whips, had 30 seconds left. Not enough time. Not enough power. But then he remembered All Might's words, "Your quirk is not about the power you copy. It's about understanding." He sprinted through the crowd, making calculated contact. A strength enhancement quirk from a muscular student. Speed from another. Jumping power from someone who looked like a frog. He couldn't hold them all. Each new quirk overwrote the last, but he could chain them. Strength to clear the debris. Speed to reach Uraraka. Jumping to. His hand touched hers, and 0 gravity flooded through him again. "Make us float!" he shouted, and she slapped her hands together despite the pain. They rose just as the 0-pointer's foot crashed down where they'd been. But they were floating up, with no way to steer, heading straight for the robot's face. Izuku's mind raced. 5 minutes of 0 gravity, but what could he? The robot's eyes focused on them, preparing some kind of laser attack. "Release it!" Izuku yelled. "What?" "Trust me. Release on my mark." They were level with the robot's head now, momentum carrying them forward. Izuku pulled back his fist, remembering every lesson about quirk application, every hour of training. Now, gravity reasserted itself. They fell, but Izuku was ready. He touched the robot's face as they passed, feeling the cold metal against his palm, searching for any quirk to copy. Nothing. Of course. It was a robot, but his gloves were more than just conductors. They were weighted, reinforced, designed for impact. He punched with everything he had, not with a quirk, but with 10 months of training, 10 months of hauling trash and building muscle and refusing to give up. The robot's head dented. Sparks flew. It stumbled backward, systems failing, and toppled with a crash that shook the entire testing ground. Izuku hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact. His everything hurt, but he was alive. More importantly, Uraraka was alive, landing nearby with a groan. Time's up. Present Mick's voice boomed. Izuku lay on his back, staring at the sky, trying to process what had just happened. He'd taken down the 0-pointer. Without a quirk. Just his fists and determination and, "Can you walk?" he asked Uraraka, forcing himself to sit up. She tested her leg, wincing. "I think it's just bruised." "That was incredible. How did you know to?" "I didn't." He helped her stand, both of them leaning on each other. "I just acted." Around them, other students stared. Some with awe, some with suspicion, most with a mixture of both. Izuku could already hear the whispers starting, about the boy who cycled through quirks like changing clothes, who took down the giant robot without any power at all. As medical robots arrived to check injuries, Izuku caught sight of a figure in the observation booth, skeletal and familiar even at a distance. All Might gave the tiniest nod of approval. The next week passed in a haze of anxiety. Izuku replayed the exam over and over, counting points, second-guessing every decision. He touched at least a dozen students without explicit permission. What if they complained? What if Yue had rules against that kind of quirk usage? His mother tried to keep his spirits up, but even she seemed nervous. They both knew this was his only shot. No other hero's school would accept someone with his quirk. Yue was famous for taking unconventional students, but even they had limits. When the letter finally arrived, Izuku stared at it for a full minute before opening it. His hands shook as he broke the seal, and a small metal disc fell out. It projected a hologram, All Might, in his hero form, grinning wide. "Young Midoriya, I am here as a projection." Izuku's mother squeezed his shoulder as they watched together. "You passed the written exam with flying colors. No surprise there, given your study habits. As for the practical..." All Might's expression grew serious. 36 villain points. A respectable score, but not quite enough to pass on combat points alone. Izuku's heart sank. 36? He thought it was more, but in the chaos. However, All Might's grin returned. There was another factor in play. A secret point system that rewards heroic action. Saving that young girl, putting yourself at risk without thought of reward, that is the true heart of heroism. The hologram shifted to show a scoreboard. Midoriya Izuku, 36 villain points, 60 rescue points, 96 total. First place. You passed, young Midoriya. Welcome to your hero academia. The projection cut out, leaving Izuku and his mother in stunned silence. Then Inko burst into tears, hugging him so tightly he could barely breathe. "I knew it," she sobbed. "I knew you could do it. My baby's going to be a hero." Izuku hugged her back, his own eyes burning. First place. He'd gotten first place with a useless quirk and 10 months of desperate preparation. But as the initial joy faded, anxiety crept back in. The entrance exam had been one thing, a controlled environment where quirk copying could be strategic. But a whole school year? Daily interaction with classmates whose quirks he'd accidentally copy? His phone buzzed. An unknown number had sent a message. "Heard you got in too. Can't wait to see what other quirks you can do." Uraraka. Another buzz. "Congratulations on your acceptance. I look forward to studying alongside someone with such a unique ability." Ida Tenya. And then, surprisingly, a third. "Don't think this changes anything, Deku. Stay out of my way at UA." Bakugo. Izuku smiled despite himself. For the first time in his life, people were reaching out to him not in spite of his quirk, but because of it. Maybe, just maybe, UA would be different. The night before his first day at UA, Izuku couldn't sleep. He sat at his desk, updating his hero notebook with every quirk he'd copied during the entrance exam. Each entry included duration, effectiveness, drawbacks, and potential combinations. The morning sun cast long shadows across UA's courtyard as Izuku stood before the massive door to Class 1A. His new uniform felt stiff and foreign, the red tie slightly crooked despite his mother's careful adjustments. His specialized gloves, now part of his official hero costume support gear, were tucked safely in his bag. He'd learned the hard way that wearing them to school made people nervous. He could hear voices inside, the excited chatter of his new classmates. His hand hovered over the door handle, trembling slightly. Once he walked through that door, there would be no hiding. Everyone would know about his quirk eventually. The question was how they'd react. 3 minutes, he muttered to himself, checking his phone. Just get there early, find a corner seat, minimize contact. The door slammed open, nearly hitting him in the face. Out of the way, Deku! Bakugo stormed past, his shoulder deliberately checking Izuku's. The brief contact sent a familiar tingle through Izuku's body. Explosion, ready to be used. His palms immediately felt different, sweat glands already producing the nitroglycerin-like substance. Kaken, I didn't mean to. Save it. Bakugo didn't even turn around. And don't you dare use it. That's my quirk. Izuku followed him into the classroom, trying to make himself small. Several students were already there. Ida, sitting ramrod straight and organizing his supplies with military precision. Uraraka, who waved enthusiastically, and others he recognized from the entrance exam. Midoriya! Uraraka called out. I saved you a seat. She'd chosen a spot in the middle of the room. Strategic for class participation, terrible for avoiding accidental contact. But her smile was so genuine that Izuku couldn't refuse. Thanks, Uraraka. He sat carefully, pulling his arms close to his body. The familiar weight of explosions sat in his palms, for minutes and counting. So your quirk, a new voice said. Izuku turned to find a girl with a spiky ponytail watching him with interest. You can copy other quirks through touch? Why yes. I'm Midoriya Izuku, Yaoyoro's Momo. She tilted her head thoughtfully. That must be incredibly challenging. The ethical implications alone. He's a quirk thief, Bakugo snarled from across the room. Touch him, and he'll steal your power. It's not stealing, Izuku said quietly, but his voice carried. It's temporary replication. 5 minutes maximum. I can't help that it activates on contact. So you say, a boy with strange elbows muttered. The classroom door opened again, and what looked like a yellow sleeping bag inched its way inside. The conversations died as everyone stared at the bizarre sight. 8 seconds, a muffled voice said from inside the bag. That's how long it took you all to quiet down. The bag unzipped, revealing a disheveled man with tired eyes and capture weapon scarves. He stood slowly, like movement itself was exhausting. I'm Aizawa Shoyuta, your homeroom teacher. He pulled out a stack of gym uniforms. Put these on and meet me outside. We're having a quirk assessment test. But what about orientation? Uraraka asked. The entrance ceremony? If you want to be heroes, you don't have time for such formalities. Aizawa's eyes swept the room, lingering on Izuku. You have 10 minutes. The changing room was a minefield of potential contact. Izuku pressed himself against the wall, trying to change as quickly as possible while avoiding his classmates. He'd almost made it when someone tapped his shoulder. Hey, you're the guy who took down the 0-pointer, right? Izuku spun around to find a boy with spiky red hair grinning at him. The moment of contact sent another quirk flooding through him. His skin suddenly felt different, harder, like he could turn it to stone at will. Sorry. The red-haired boy raised his hands. Didn't mean to activate your quirk. I'm Kirishima Aijuru. It's fine, Izuku said, though he could feel explosion fading, replaced by this new hardening quirk. I'm Midoriya. That must be so manly. Kirishima's eyes sparkled. Getting to experience everyone's quirks. What's mine feel like? Again, that question. Twice in 2 days, after years of everyone treating his quirk like a violation. Like I'm wearing armor under my skin, Izuku said carefully. Like I could be unbreakable if I wanted. Dude, that's exactly it. Kirishima activated his own quirk, his skin taking on a rocky texture. We should totally train together sometime. I want to see how you use it differently than me. Before Izuku could process this unprecedented enthusiasm, Ida's voice cut through the chatter. Everyone hurry! We have 3 minutes remaining. Outside, Aizawa waited with the patience of a predator. His eyes tracked each student as they assembled, noting times, attitudes, interactions. When everyone had gathered, he held up a small device. Softball throw, standing long jump, 50-meter dash, grip strength, and more. You did these in middle school, yes? But you weren't allowed to use your quirks. He tossed the ball to Bakugo. You scored highest in the entrance exam. What was your best softball throw in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo said with characteristic confidence. Now do it with your quirk. Bakugo's grin was feral. He wound up, and at the moment of release, an explosion launched the ball into the stratosphere. Die! He shouted, because apparently even softball throwing needed a battle cry. Aizawa held up his device. 705.2 meters. This is what you're capable of when you use your quirks to their fullest. Today, I'll be testing your limits. His expression darkened. Oh, and the student who places last will be expelled. The class erupted in protests, but Aizawa's hair rose, his eyes glowing red as he activated his quirk. Everyone fell silent. I can expel anyone I deem unfit to be a hero. That's my freedom as a teacher here. His gaze found Izuku again. Some quirks require more creativity than others to be heroic. Show me you belong here. The tests began. Izuku watched his classmates showcase their abilities. Uraraka making objects weightless, Ida blazing through the 50-meter dash, a boy with a tail using it for enhanced mobility. Each display was a potential tool for him, but also a reminder of his limitation. 5 minutes. That's all he got. When his turn came for the grip strength test, he still had 2 minutes left on Kirishima's hardening. He activated it, feeling his hand turn to stone-like consistency, and squeezed. The device beeped. 156 kilograms. Impressive, Aizawa noted. Whose quirk? Kirishima's, sir. I have about 90 seconds left on it. And then? Then I need to touch someone else or rely on my base strength. Aizawa made a note on his tablet. Continue. The 50-meter dash was next. Izuku's hardening had faded, leaving him quirkless. He could try to touch Ida, but that would mean asking permission in front of everyone or making it look accidental. Neither felt right, so he ran without a quirk. His months of training showed. He wasn't the fastest, but he wasn't the slowest either. Midoriya, Aizawa called out after his run. You're not using your quirk effectively. I can't just touch people without permission, sir. Can't? Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Or won't? Before Izuku could answer, a French-accented voice piped up. Monsieur, I would be honored to share my quirk. A boy with a strange belt stepped forward, his stomach twinkling like stars. Aoyama Yuga, at your service. My naval laser is magnifique, non? Hesitantly, Izuku reached out and touched Aoyama's offered hand. The quirk that flooded through him was bizarre, a building pressure in his stomach, like energy begging to be released. Careful, Aoyama warned. It can cause stomach problems if overused. The standing long jump was next. Izuku faced the sandbox, feeling the laser building in his core. He'd seen Aoyama use it for propulsion during the entrance exam. In theory, he jumped, twisting in midair to fire the laser downward. The recoil sent him flying forward, far beyond what his muscles alone could achieve. He landed hard, rolling to absorb the impact. 8.7 meters, Aizawa announced. Creative application. Merci! Aoyama called out. You used it with such style, but not everyone was impressed. Izuku caught several classmates exchanging glances, worried, calculating, suspicious. He was showcasing their quirks, potentially better than they could. The test continued. For the ball throw, a pink-skinned girl offered her acid quirk. It's totally cool. I want to see what you do with it. Izuku coated the ball in a thin layer of acid that reduced their resistance, achieving a respectable distance. By the time they reached the final tests, a pattern had emerged. Some classmates eagerly offered their quirks, curious to see them used differently. Others kept their distance, arms crossed, quirks guarded like state secrets. Last test, Aizawa announced. Endurance run. Continue until you can't. This was bad. Endurance meant time, and Izuku's quirk had a 5-minute limit. He could copy someone's stamina-enhancing quirk, but it would fade mid-run. Ribbit, you can use mine if you want. Izuku turned to find a girl with frog-like features holding out her hand. Ajiri Tsuyu. Call me Tsu. Are you sure? Ribbit. I'm curious. The moment they touched, Izuku felt the change. His legs became stronger, springier. His tongue felt weird, like it wanted to extend. Even his vision sharpened slightly. Thanks, Ajiri, I mean Tsu, the run began. Izuku bounded forward, using the frog-like legs to cover ground in powerful leaps. But he kept one eye on his internal timer. 4 minutes. 3. 2. When the quirk faded, he was ready. His body returned to baseline human, but he built a lead. He pushed through on training alone, muscles screaming, until finally, time, Aizawa called. Everyone stop. Izuku collapsed onto the track, gasping. Around him, classmates were in various states of exhaustion. Ida was still standing, barely winded. A boy who'd been invisible the entire time flickered back into view. Now then, Aizawa pulled up a holographic display. Your results. The rankings appeared. Izuku's heart hammered as he searched for his name. 11th. Out of 20. Not last. Not even close to last. Oh yeah, Aizawa said casually. I lied about expelling someone. It was a logical ruse to bring out your best performances. The class erupted again, but Izuku barely heard them. 11th. With a quirk everyone called useless, he'd placed in the middle of the pack at UA. Midoriya. Stay after class. The words cut through his relief like ice water. The classroom emptied slowly, classmates casting curious glances as they left. Some offered encouragement, Uraraka's thumbs up, Kirishima's manly nod, even a ribbit from Tsu. Others, like Bakugo, left without a word. When they were alone, Aizawa leaned against his desk, eyes unreadable. Your quirk, he began. It's a problem. Izuku's stomach dropped. Sir, let me finish. Aizawa held up a hand. It's a problem because you're not using it properly. You're treating it like a weakness to manage instead of a tool to master. But the ethical implications are something every hero faces. Aizawa's capture weapon shifted slightly. My quirk erases others' abilities. Do you think I ask permission every time I use it on a villain? On a rampaging civilian? That's different. You're stopping dangerous quirks, not copying them. Is it? Aizawa pulled out a tablet, showing footage from the entrance exam. Watch. Izuku saw himself cycling through quirks, saving Uraraka, taking down robots. But Aizawa zoomed in on something else. The other students' faces when he copied their abilities. Look at Uraraka when you use zero gravity. What do you see? She's smiling? Pride. Someone else understanding her quirk, using it in ways she hadn't considered. Now look at Ida. The footage showed Ida watching Izuku use engine, his expression thoughtful rather than offended. He's analyzing, Izuku realized. Learning from how I used his quirk differently. Exactly. Aizawa closed the tablet. Your quirk isn't just copying. It's showing others new perspectives on their own abilities. That has value, if you stop treating it like something shameful. But Kaken, Bakugo said it's violating. Like wearing someone else's skin, Bakugo has his own issues to work through. Aizawa's tone was dry. But he's not wrong that it's intimate. Quirks are personal, tied to identity. When you copy one, you're not just taking power, you're experiencing someone else's core. He stood, moving toward the door. That's why you need to be better. Not just at using quirks, but at understanding the people behind them. Your combat skills are adequate. Your analysis is excellent, but your empathy needs work. My empathy? You touch someone and gain their power, but do you understand their struggle? Their pain? The weight they carry? Aizawa paused at the door. Tomorrow, we'll have regular classes, but I'm assigning you additional training. Every day after school, you'll work with a different classmate. Not just copying their quirk, but understanding it. Learning their stories. Is that allowed? I'm allowing it. Aizawa's eyes flashed red briefly. Unless you'd prefer expulsion for failing to maximize your potential? No, sir. Good. First session is tomorrow with Todoroki. He volunteered. Izuku blinked. Todoroki volunteered? But he hasn't said a word to me, exactly why he needs this most. Aizawa opened the door. Dismissed. Izuku walked home in a daze, replaying the conversation. Additional training. Understanding quirks and their users. It was everything he dreamed of and everything he'd feared. His phone buzzed with messages from his classmates. Uraraka, great job today. Want to study together sometime? Kirishima, dude, you made my quirk look so cool. We should definitely train. Ida, I noticed inefficiencies in how you used engine. Perhaps we could discuss optimization strategies? Even Oyama, Monami, you used my laser with such genius qua. We must compare notes. But it was the last message that stopped him cold. Unknown number. Aizawa says I have to train with you tomorrow. Don't make me regret it. Todoroki Shuto. The boy who'd barely spoken during class, who'd frozen an entire building during the quirk assessment without breaking a sweat. The boy whose left side he'd never seen him use. What secrets was that quirk hiding? That night, Izuku updated his hero notebook with a new section, Quirk Profiles Class 1A. But instead of just listing abilities and applications, he added categories he never considered before. Emotional connection to quirk, drawbacks beyond the physical, personal history/trauma, how they want their quirk to be seen, how they fear their quirk being seen. He stared at Bakugo's entry the longest. Under how they fear their quirk being seen, he wrote, as something that can be taken away. His phone rang, All Might's special ringtone. Young Midoriya. I heard about your first day. 11th place is admirable. All Might. Izuku paused, choosing his words carefully. Aizawa-sensei wants me to train with different classmates. To understand their quirks better. Aizawa's methods. The bus ride to the unforeseen simulation joint should have been exciting. Their first real hero training exercise, a chance to practice rescue operations in controlled environments. Instead, Izuku found himself pressed against the window, acutely aware of every potential point of contact with his classmates. 3 days of Aizawa's additional training had left him raw. Todoroki's session had been a revelation of pain, eyes so cold it burned, fire locked away behind walls of trauma. Yaoyorozu's creation quirk had given him a migraine that lasted hours, his brain struggling to process the chemical formulas she instinctively knew. Even Kirishima's seemingly straightforward hardening came with the psychological weight of needing to be unbreakable, of never showing weakness. You're overthinking again, Tsuyu observed from across the aisle, her large eyes unblinking. Ribbit. Sorry, Deku's always overthinking, Bakugo snarled from the front. That's what happens when your quirk depends on other people. Makes you weak. That's not very heroic, Bakugo, Kirishima said. Midoriya's quirk is super manly. He gets to understand everyone. Understanding doesn't win fights, Todoroki said quietly, his first words of the entire trip. The bus pulled to a stop before the conversation could escalate. Through the windows, Izuku could see the massive dome of the USJ, looking more like a theme park than a training facility. Everyone stay together, Aizawa instructed as they disembarked. No wandering off, no unauthorized quirk usage. 13 will explain the exercise inside. They entered through massive doors to find a wonderland of disaster zones. A shipwreck area, a landslide zone, a burning building, floods, every type of catastrophe a hero might face, all contained within one enormous space. Welcome! The Space Hero 13 stood at the entrance, their puffy suit making them look like a friendly marshmallow. Today, you'll learn that quirks aren't just for fighting villains, they're for saving lives. Izuku pulled out his notebook, ready to document everything. 13's black hole quirk had always fascinated him, the ultimate rescue tool that could also be unimaginably destructive. As many of you know, 13 continued, my quirk can suck in and destroy anything. I've used it to save countless lives, but if I'm not careful, I could easily kill. Many of you have similar abilities, powers that can harm as easily as help. Today is about learning control, about understanding that. The lights went out. For a moment, there was only confused murmuring. Then the fountain in the central plaza began to swirl, dark mist pouring from nowhere. Aizawa's capture weapon was already unwinding, his hair rising. 13, protect the students. He barked. This is not a drill. Figures emerged from the mist, dozens of them, then hundreds. Villains of every shape and size, spreading across the facility like an infection. At their center stood three figures, a man covered in severed hands, a creature of exposed muscle and brain, and a living shadow of purple mist. The trespassing the other day was them after all, Aizawa muttered. They're here for All Might. Izuku's blood ran cold. All Might was supposed to be here, but he'd used up his time this morning stopping a villain on the way to work. These villains didn't know that. They'd come prepared for the symbol of peace and found only 13. Begin evacuation, Aizawa ordered, his goggles sliding into place. I'll hold them off. Sensei, you can't? Izuku stepped forward without thinking. Your quirk works best against individuals. There are too many, and if they know your weakness, no hero is a one-trick pony, Aizawa said, and then he was gone, leaping down the stairs in a blur of motion. What followed was a masterclass in combat. Aizawa flowed through villains like water, his capture weapon binding and throwing, his quirk flickering on and off with surgical precision. He couldn't erase multiple quirks at once, but he could predict, adapt, overcome. We need to go, 13 urged, but the mist villain was already there, spreading between them and the exit. I am Kurojairi, the mist spoke. We are the League of Villains. Forgive our audacity, but we've come to UA to extinguish the symbol of peace. All Might's not here, Kirishima shouted. That is unfortunate. Kurojairi's mist began to expand. But perhaps we can make use of his students instead. The darkness engulfed them. Izuku felt himself falling, tumbling through space that wasn't space. He reached out desperately, his hand finding someone's arm, Tsuyu's, based on the texture, just before reality reasserted itself. They crashed into water. The shipwreck zone was a nightmare of broken metal and churning waves. Izuku surfaced, gasping, to find himself surrounded by villains. They stood on the deck of a broken ship, grinning down at him and Tsuyu like sharks who'd found prey. Frog girl and green boy, one villain laughed. Easy pickings, Midoriya, Tsuyu said calmly, treading water with amphibian ease. Can you use my quirk? Ribbit. He still had it, 3 minutes remaining from their contact during the fall. Yeah, but, then follow me. She dove. Without hesitation, Izuku followed, his copied frog physiology making the water feel natural. They swam deep, away from the villain's immediate reach. Underwater, Tsuyu pointed to the ship's hull. There, a hole they could enter through. They surfaced inside the ship's broken interior, hidden from view. We need a plan, Tsuyu whispered. Ribbit. How long do you have my quirk? 2 minutes, maybe less. Then we move fast. Her tongue shot out, wrapping around a pipe. I'll distract. You attack. Use my tongue, they won't expect it from you. It was a good plan. Simple, effective. But Izuku's mind was racing with larger concerns. They knew when to attack. When All Might wouldn't be here. That means, information leak, she finished. Ribbit. Worry about that later. Survival first. She was right. They moved to opposite ends of the ship's interior. Tsuyu made noise, drawing the villain's attention. When they clustered at one entrance, Izuku struck from behind. His tongue, Tsuyu's tongue, shot out like a whip. The first villain went down, tangled and choking. The second turned, firing some kind of needle quirk, but Izuku's frog legs launched him to the ceiling. He rebounded, using momentum and flexibility he never possessed, taking down 2 more. Behind you, Tsu warned. A villain with water manipulation quirk had found him, liquid tentacles reaching out. Izuku's timer hit 0. The frog quirk vanished, leaving him merely human as water slammed him into the wall. Got you now, brat. But Izuku had trained for this. Quirkless combat was his foundation. He rolled with the impact, grabbed a broken pipe, and struck with precision All Might had drilled into him. The villain crumpled. Impressive, Ribbit. Tsu dealt with the last villain, her tongue retracting. You fight well without a quirk. Had to learn, Izuku panted. Can't always rely on. An explosion rocked the ship. Through the holes in the hull, they could see the central plaza. Aizawa was still fighting, but slowing. The creature, Nomu, the hand-covered villain had called it, was advancing on him. We need to help, Izuku said. How? We're students, Ribbit. We should evacuate. With what quirks? Izuku's mind was already calculating. Tsu, I need you to get me close to other classmates. If I can copy the right combinations, that's dangerous. So is doing nothing. She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Mineta is in this zone too. Saw him stuck to the side of another ship. His quirk might help, Ribbit. They swam again, Tsu pulling Izuku through the water with her superior mobility. They found Mineta exactly where she'd spotted him, stuck to a ship's hull with his purple balls, crying, "We're gonna die," he wailed. "These villains are everywhere and, Mineta!" Izuku grabbed his shoulder, feeling the sticky quirk flow into him. "Pull yourself together. We need your quirk." "My quirk? It's useless. I can only stick things." "Sticky is exactly what we need." Izuku was already pulling purple balls from his head, ignoring how weird it felt. "Tsu, can you throw these?" Ribbit. "What are you planning?" Trap set up. "Mineta, you stay here and keep producing. Tsu and I will create a perimeter. When villains come through, they get stuck," Tsu finished, understanding dawning. "Clever, Ribbit." They worked fast. Izuku's 5 minutes of pop-off were used strategically, creating choke points and trap zones. When villains pursued, they found themselves stuck to walls, floors, each other. Mineta, seeing his quirk used tactically, gained confidence and added his own throws. "See?" Izuku told him as they watched villains struggle against the sticky balls. "No quirk is useless. It's all about application." You made my quirk look cool," Mineta said, awe in his voice. "It was always cool. You just needed to see it differently." Izuku checked his internal timer. "We need to move." The others, another explosion, this one from the landslide zone. Through the chaos, Izuku could see Todoroki had frozen his entire area, villains trapped in ice. But Bakugo was in the collapse zone, explosions lighting up the artificial rock slides. "They're scattered," Tsu observed. "The mist villains separated us strategically." Ribbit, "Then we unscatter." Izuku's mind raced. "Tsu, can you get me to the landslide zone?" "If I can reach Todoroki, his eyes could change everything," she agreed. "Let's go." The journey across the USJ was harrowing. They dodged villains, used Tsu's mobility and Mineta's sticky balls to create paths and barriers. By the time they reached the landslide zone, Izuku could see the situation deteriorating. Aizawa was down, the Noma holding him broken against the ground. The hand-covered villain, Shigaraki, Izuku heard someone call him, was monologuing about game mechanics and hero society. 13 was injured, their suit torn from attempting to use black hole on Kurogiri, and his classmates were scattered, fighting for their lives. "Todoroki!" Izuku called out as they approached the frozen zone. The dual quirk boy turned, his right side covered in frost. "Midoriya. You survived. We need to work together." "Can I?" Izuku hesitated. Todoroki's quirk came with baggage, trauma he'd felt during their training. "I need your ice. Please." Something flickered in Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes. "You felt it, didn't you? During our session." "What my quirk really means. I felt enough to know I'm sorry for what you've endured," Izuku said carefully. "But right now, we need that power to save everyone." Todoroki stared at him for a long moment, then extended his right hand. 5 minutes. Use it better than I do." The cold hit like a physical blow. Not just temperature, but emotion, years of pain, of rejection, of a quirk used as a tool of ambition rather than heroism. Izuku gasped but held on, accepting both the power and the burden. "Go," Todoroki said. "I'll gather others." Izuku moved, ice spreading from his footsteps. The quirk was intuitive yet complex. He could feel moisture in the air, in the ground, in living beings. The temptation to freeze everything was overwhelming, but he remembered Todoroki's control, his precision. He created ice slides, connecting the scattered zones. Classmates began using them to regroup. Kaminari slid down from the mountain zone, electricity crackling. Yaoyorozu and Jairu emerged from the downpour area. "Midoriya!" Ida appeared in a burst of speed. 13 managed to get me out before being injured. "I'm going for help." "Go!" Izuku created an ice ramp to the exit. "We'll hold them off." As Ida rocketed away, Izuku turned to the central plaza. The Nomo had Aizawa by the head, Shigaraki reaching down with a decaying hand. No! Izuku moved without thinking, ice erupting in a massive wave. It crashed into the Nomu, forcing it to drop Aizawa. Shigaraki leaped back, his hand inches from their teacher's face. Oh? A student with ice powers? Shigaraki tilted his head like a curious child. Not Todoroki, interesting. You're that Quirk copier, aren't you? The ice was already fading, Izuku's 5 minutes nearly up. He stood between the villains and his fallen teacher, mind racing for options. Nomu, Shigaraki said casually, kill him. The creature moved faster than anything that size should. Izuku barely dodged, feeling wind from its passage. He needed a quirk, any quirk. A hand grabbed his shoulder. Use mine, Monoma! Aoyama's naval laser flooded through him just as the Nomu attacked again. Izuku fired point-blank into its face, the beam of light buying him seconds, but the Nomu didn't even flinch. Its skin was burned but already healing, regenerating before their eyes. Shock absorption and super regeneration, Shigaraki laughed. Nomu was designed to kill All Might. You think student tricks will work? More classmates arrived. Bakugo exploded onto the scene, Kirishima beside him. 13, despite their injuries, tried to coordinate. But the Nomu was unstoppable, shrugging off every attack. We need erasure, Izuku realized. If we can stop its quirks, he dove for Aizawa, dodging the Nomu's grab. His teacher was unconscious but breathing. The moment Izuku's hand touched Aizawa's skin, he felt it. Erasure, unlike any quirk he'd copied before. It wasn't just power. It was responsibility, the weight of negation. Izuku understood instantly why Aizawa's eyes hurt, why he needed eye drops. This quirk demanded everything. Everyone back! Izuku shouted, his hair rising as he activated erasure. His eyes locked onto the Nomu, and he pulled. The creature's quirks vanished. No regeneration. No shock absorption. Just muscle and momentum. Now! Bakugo didn't need more prompting. His explosion hit the Nomu full force, actually causing damage. Kirishima followed up, hardened fists cracking against now vulnerable flesh, but Izuku couldn't hold it. Erasure ate at his stamina like acid. His eyes burned, teared, demanded he blink. 3 seconds. 4. 5. He blinked. The Nomu's hand closed around his throat, lifting him off the ground. Regeneration kicked in instantly, healing Bakugo's damage. Interesting, Shigaraki mused. You can even copy erasure. Kurogiri, we're taking this one too. Midoriya! The voice boomed through the USJ like thunder. The doors exploded inward, and there he stood, all might, but not smiling. Not cheerful, furious. Have no fear, he said, but the words carried threat rather than comfort. I am here. What happened next was too fast for Izuku to fully track. All Might crossed the plaza in an instant, his fist connecting with the Nomu's arm. The limb shattered, dropping Izuku, who gasped for air. Young Midoriya, get to safety! But Izuku couldn't move, still reeling from Erasure's drain. He watched All Might and the Nomu collide like forces of nature, each blow shaking the entire facility. He's not smiling, Todoroki observed, suddenly beside him. I've never seen All Might not smile. The roar of the crowd was deafening, a physical force that pressed against Izuku as he stood in the waiting room beneath the stadium. Through the concrete walls, he could feel the vibrations of thousands of feet stamping, thousands of voices chanting. The UA Sports Festival, the most watched event in Japan, where future heroes proved their worth to the world. His hands trembled as he adjusted his gym uniform for the dozenth time. 2 weeks had passed since the USJ incident, 2 weeks of recovery and preparation. His throat still bore faint bruises from the Noma's grip, a reminder of how close they'd all come to death. Nervous, Deku? Izuku didn't need to turn to recognize Bakugo's voice, though it lacked its usual venom. Ever since USJ, something had shifted between them, not friendship, that bridge had burned long ago, but maybe understanding. Terrified, Izuku admitted, pulling on his specialized gloves. Millions of people watching, pro-heroes scouting, and my quirk. Your quirk is what it is, Bakugo interrupted. Whining about it won't change anything. He paused at the door. Just, don't copy mine without asking. Not today. It was the closest thing to consideration Bakugo had ever shown him. The waiting room filled with their classmates, each dealing with pre-competition nerves in their own way. Ida performed stretches with mechanical precision. Todoroki sat apart, meditating. Uraraka slapped her cheeks repeatedly, psyching herself up. Listen up! Kirishima called out, ever the morale booster. We survived real villains. This is just a competition that determines our entire future as heroes, Yayorosa pointed out, stress evident in her voice. No pressure then, Kaminari laughed nervously. Izuku pulled out his notebook, not his usual hero analysis journal, but a new one labeled Quirk Strategy Sports Festival. He'd spent 2 weeks planning, analyzing past festivals, considering every possible scenario. His quirk made him uniquely vulnerable and uniquely dangerous in this setting. The door opened, and Aizawa entered, looking marginally less exhausted than usual. His arms were still in casts from USJ, but he'd insisted on attending. First years, you're up. Remember, this isn't just about winning. It's about showing the world what kind of heroes you'll become. His eyes found Izuku. All of you have unique challenges to overcome. Use them. They filed out into the tunnel, the roar growing louder with each step. Izuku's mind raced through his strategies one more time. The first event was always an elimination round. Racing, obstacles, something to thin the herd. He'd need movement quirks, but which ones? From whom? How could he ask without seeming like he was using people? Light exploded around them as they entered the stadium. The crowd's roar became a living thing, washing over them in waves. In the center of the field stood Midnight, their referee, her outfit somehow even more provocative in person. Welcome to the Yui Sports Festival. Her voice echoed through massive speakers. Let's hear it for the Hero Course first years. The crowd went wild. Izuku spotted heroes in the VIP sections, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, Death Arms. All watching. All judging. Before we begin, Midnight continued, our student pledge. From Class 1A, Bakugo Katsuki, Izuku winced. Of course Bakugo had scored highest on the entrance exam. Of course he'd be giving the pledge. This could only go. I pledge, Bakugo said into the microphone, his voice carrying across the stadium, that I'm going to win. The boos were immediate and deafening. Students from other courses shouted protests. General Studies, support, even other Hero Course students glared daggers at Class 1A. Way to make us targets, Kirishima muttered. But Izuku noticed something others missed. Bakugo's eyes had found his in the crowd. That declaration wasn't just arrogance. It was a challenge. A gauntlet thrown specifically at him. Now then! Midnight cracked her whip, silencing the crowd. Let's get to the first event. The massive screens lit up, cycling through possibilities before landing on obstacle race. All 11 classes will participate in this 4-kilometer race around the stadium. Midnight explained. As long as you stay on the course, anything goes. Izuku's mind immediately went into overdrive. 4 kilometers. Hundreds of students. Limited space. He needed a strategy beyond just copying movement quirks. He needed sequencing, timing, positioning. They were herded to the starting line, a tunnel that would create an immediate bottleneck. Izuku positioned himself carefully, not at the front where he'd be crushed, not at the back where he'd fall behind, but to the side where he could slip through gaps. Hey, Midoriya! Uraraka appeared beside him, nervous energy radiating from her. Want to work together? Before he could answer, Todoroki's cold voice cut through. That would be unwise, Uraraka. In this competition, Midoriya's quirk makes him everyone's enemy. That's not, Izuku started. Isn't it? Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes fixed on him. How many quirks are you planning to copy without permission today? How many people's powers will you steal for your own advancement? The words stung because they held truth. Izuku had strategies, plans, but they all involved using others' quirks. Was that different from stealing? Start. The starting pistol fired, and philosophical concerns vanished in the crush of bodies. The tunnel instantly became a nightmare of pushing, shoving, quirks activating in close quarters. Izuku stayed low, weaving between larger students, until ice exploded through the tunnel. Todoroki's glacier filled the entire space, freezing dozens of students in place. He surfed along the top, already far ahead. But Izuku had expected this, had watched Todoroki's combat footage obsessively. He jumped at the last second, hands slapping against Aoyama's shoulder, as they both cleared the ice. Naval laser flooded through him, and Izuku immediately fired downward, using the recoil to launch himself over the frozen obstacle. Pardonnez-moi, Aoyama called, but he was smiling. Use it with style. Izuku landed running, Bakugo's explosions already echoing ahead. The first obstacle loomed, robots from the entrance exam, including several zero-pointers towering over the track. Students scattered, some fighting, others trying to slip past. Izuku needed a new quirk. Naval laser wouldn't cut it against these numbers. He spotted Kirishima hardening his skin to tank through smaller robots. Kirishima? Izuku called out. Red Riot teamwork? It was a code they developed during training. Kirishima grinned, holding out his hand as he ran. Let's do it, man. The handshake was brief, but enough. Hardening flowed through Izuku, and together they charged the robot line. Kirishima took point, Izuku covering his back, their hardened bodies deflecting projectiles. Unbreakable! They shouted in unison, punching through a one-pointer that blocked their path. But Izuku's timer was ticking. 4 minutes of hardening left, and the race was far from over. He needed to be strategic, chain quirks efficiently. The second obstacle appeared, a canyon with floating platforms and ropes. The lead students were already crossing, each using their quirks uniquely. Todoroki created ice bridges. Bakugo blasted across. A pink-haired girl from support used gadgets to swing like a mechanical spider. Izuku's hardening had 30 seconds left. Not enough to help here. He needed Tsu. He spotted her using her tongue to swing between platforms. She glanced back, read his situation instantly. Catch up, ribbit! Her tongue wrapped around his wrist just as hardening faded. The pull nearly dislocated his shoulder, but suddenly he was airborne, Tsu's momentum carrying them both across the chasm. Thanks. He managed as they landed. No problem, ribbit. But I can't carry you the whole way. She was right. Izuku needed his own momentum. As they ran, he brushed past other students, quick touches that gave him options. Ciro's tape. Shoji's diplomy arms. Even a general studies student whose quirks seemed to be enhanced jumping. The final obstacle made his blood run cold, a minefield. Are they insane? Someone shouted. They're not lethal. Midnight announced cheerfully. But they'll definitely slow you down. The lead students picked their way carefully across. Todoroki and Bakugo were neck and neck, their rivalry driving them forward. But careful meant slow, and Izuku needed an edge. He analyzed the situation. The mines were pressure-activated, buried just beneath pink spots in the dirt. Most students were avoiding them entirely, but what if? This is crazy, he muttered, then louder, everyone stay back. Students around him hesitated as Izuku sprinted to a cluster of mines. He'd switched to the jumping quirk, legs coiled with spring-like power. At the last second, he leaped backward, landing hard on multiple mines simultaneously. The explosion was massive. Pink smoke and dirt erupted, and Izuku rode the shockwave, jumping quirk turning destructive force into forward momentum. He soared over the minefield, over the carefully picking leaders, screaming partly in strategy and partly in terror. He hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb impact. His jumping quirk was gone, 5 minutes expired, but he was in the lead. The stadium entrance was just ahead, explosions behind him. Bakugo, face twisted in rage and something like respect, blasting forward with everything he had. Ice followed, Todoroki creating a frozen highway for himself. They hit the stadium entrance together, Izuku diving forward just as Bakugo's hand reached for his collar. The three of them tumbled across the finish line in a heap of limbs and quirks. And the winner is... It's too close to call. Midnight's voice boomed. We'll need to review the footage. But what an explosive finish! Izuku lay on his back, gasping. His everything hurt, but he'd done it. First, second, or third, he'd proven he belonged here. Deku, Bakugo growled, still on the ground beside him. That minefield trick was insane. Learn from the best, Izuku wheezed. You would have done the same. Damn right. There was something almost like pride in Bakugo's voice. But next time, I won't let you pull ahead. Todoroki stood, brushing dirt from his uniform. He stared down at Izuku with an unreadable expression. You didn't copy my quirk. You didn't offer. No, Todoroki agreed. I didn't. He walked away, leaving Izuku to puzzle over the interaction. Had that been a test? A challenge? Or something else entirely? After review, Midnight announced, first place goes to Midoriya Izuku. The stadium erupted. Izuku sat up, hardly believing it. He'd won. The useless quirk had taken first place. But as he stood, accepting the cheers and jeers in equal measure, he caught sight of his classmates' faces. Some were supportive, Uraraka cheering, Ida applauding precisely. But others looked wary, calculating. He'd shown them all what he could do with their quirks. The second event was announced, Cavalry Battle. Teams of 2 to 4, points based on placement in the race. And the twist, first place is worth 10 million points. The stadium fell silent. Then every eye turned to Izuku. He was prey now. 15 minutes to form teams. 15 minutes while wearing a target worth 10 million points. Izuku stood in the prep room, watching potential teammates actively avoid him. Conversations died when he approached. Students who'd cheered his victory now saw him as a liability. It's nothing personal, a Class 1B student said, not meeting his eyes. But that many points makes you impossible to protect. Plus, another added, who wants to team with someone who might copy their quirk and use it better? The word shouldn't have hurt. He'd heard variations his whole life. But after USJ, after the race, he'd hoped things were changing. Deku-kun. He turned to find Uraraka bouncing toward him, determined smile in place. Let's team up. My zero gravity would be perfect for mobility. Uraraka, you don't have to, I want to. Her expression grew serious. You've helped me during the entrance exam. Friends support each other. Friends. The word warmed something in his chest. Thank you. I shall join as well. Ida appeared, engines revving. Your strategic mind combined with our mobility creates optimal synergy. But Ida, the 10 million, is a challenge worthy of future heroes. Ida chopped the air decisively. Plus, I'm curious to see how you utilize Recipro Burst. They had 3. They needed one more, someone whose quirk could round out their strategy. Izuku scanned the room, noting team compositions. Bakugo had recruited Kirishima, Siro, and Ishido, a balanced offensive team. Todoroki had Yayorozu, Kaminari, and surprisingly, Ida's brother from Class 3A. No. Not his brother. Someone with a similar build who Izuku didn't recognize. 1 minute remaining. Midnight announced. We need a fourth, Uraraka said urgently. Anyone. I'll do it. They turned to find Tokoyami standing in shadows, dark shadow hovering behind him. Your tactical mind intrigues me. Plus, Dark Shadow is curious about your quirk. He wants to know what it feels like to be copied, Dark Shadow added in his raspy voice. A balanced team. Mobility from Uraraka and Ida, defense from Dark Shadow, and Izuku's quirk to adapt as needed. It could work. Time's up. Teams, take your positions. The cavalry battle arena was smaller than the race track, forcing teams into close quarters. Izuku wore the 10 million point headband, feeling its weight like a physical thing. Around them, 11 other teams spread out, all eyeing them like predators. Standard formation, Izuku instructed. Ida in front for speed, Uraraka and Tokoyami on sides for defense, me on top for visibility. Remember, we just need to survive 15 minutes. That's not very plus ultra, Uraraka teased, but she was nervous too. Everyone ready? Midnight raised her flag. Begin! Chaos erupted instantly. Every team charged them, quirks blazing. Ida's engines roared to life, shooting them backward just as multiple attacks converged on their former position. Holy, everyone's after us! Uraraka yelped. Stay calm. Izuku's mind raced, tracking threats. Tokoyami, Dark Shield left side, Dark Shadow expanded, blocking Kaminari's electricity. But that was a feint. Todoroki's team circled right, eyes spreading toward their feet. Uraraka, now! She slapped Ida and Tokoyami, reducing their weight. Ida's engines, suddenly moving less mass, launched them over the ice. But they were airborne, vulnerable. Siro's tape shot toward the headband. Izuku leaned back, barely dodging, but the movement exposed them to Bakugo's team. Die! Bakugo launched himself with explosions, hand reaching for the 10 million. Time slowed. Izuku could dodge, but that would put his team at risk. Instead, he reached out, letting Bakugo's hand hit his arm. Explosion flooded through him just as Bakugo grabbed, not the headband. Izuku had shifted at the last second, and Bakugo's hand closed on air. Recipro burst. Ida shouted, the hidden technique Izuku had been saving. Ida's engines went into overdrive, shooting them across the arena faster than anyone could track. They came to a stop at the edge, engines smoking. That's all I've got, Ida panted. Engines need to cool down. They were stationary targets now. Teams circled like sharks, coordinating. Izuku still had explosion for 3 minutes, but using Bakugo's quirk felt like betrayal of their tentative truce. Midoriya, Todoroki's team approached slowly. You interest me. Likewise, Izuku replied, watching Todoroki's right side frost over. During our training session when you copied my ice. Todoroki paused. What did you feel? The question caught Izuku off guard. Around them, other teams held back, sensing something significant. Cold, Izuku said honestly. But not just temperature. Emotional cold. Isolation. Like the ice was a wall between you and the world. Todoroki's eyes widened slightly. You felt that in just 5 minutes? I feel everything. The admission hurt. Every quirk comes with its owner's heart. Bakugo's anger. Uraraka's desire to lift others. Ida's need for speed and precision. I don't just copy power. I copy pieces of people, then copy this. Todoroki raised his left hand, and for the first time in public, flames erupted from his side. The stadium gasped. Even Endeavor, watching from the stands, leaned forward. Todoroki Shudo, the Ice Prince, was using his fire. I refuse to be my father's tool, Todoroki declared, flames and ice swirling around him. But I also refuse to limit myself out of spite. If you can feel our hearts through our quirks, then feel mine, all of it. He attacked, fire and ice in perfect harmony. Izuku's team scattered, barely avoiding the dual assault. Other teams took advantage, pressing from all sides. Dark Shadow. Tokoyami tried to defend, but light from Todoroki's flames weakened the shadow creature. They were pinned. Surrounded. The 10 million points about to be stolen, Deku-kun, Uraraka said quietly. Trust me. She pressed her fingertips together. Release. Gravity returned to Ida and Tokoyami, but not to Izuku. He floated upward, still wearing the headband, out of reach. But floating meant no control, no defense. I've got you. Mei Hatsum from support course, riding what looked like a flying skateboard, caught him midair. You're the quirk copier, right? Want to test my babies? She pressed the device into his hand, some kind of grappling hook launcher. Not a quirk, but technology. Adaptability of a different kind. Izuku fired the grapple, swinging through the air like a demented spider. Teams below tried to track him, but aerial combat wasn't something they prepared for. He spotted his team below, landed long enough for Uraraka to release her quirk, then they were moving again. 1 minute remaining. Midnight announced. Desperation set in among the other teams. Quirks flew wild, acid, electricity, tape, explosions. Monoma from Class 1B managed to touch Izuku during a close pass, and suddenly there were 2 quirk copiers in play. Interesting. Monoma laughed, cycling through stolen quirks. Let's see who uses this power better. But Monoma had power without context. He copied Dark Shadow but couldn't control it properly. Took explosion but mistimed the blasts. His 5 minutes ran out rapidly on each quirk, leaving him grasping for more. That's the difference, Izuku realized aloud. I don't just copy quirks. I copy understanding. The final seconds ticked down. Todoroki made one last desperate play, ice racing toward them, but Ida's engines had cooled just enough for a final burst. Time, the buzzer sounded. Izuku's team stood victorious, still wearing the 10 million points. They'd survived. But as teams separated, Izuku noticed the looks hadn't changed. If anything, they'd intensified. He'd shown them all his versatility, his ability to adapt and overcome. Some saw inspiration. Others saw threat. Midoriya, Todoroki approached as they left the field. What you said about feeling our hearts. I meant it, Izuku said. Your fire isn't just heat. It's passion locked away. Pain transformed to power. When I copied it for those seconds, he shuddered. I felt years of hurt. Then you understand why I've avoided using it. I understand why you started today. Todoroki almost smiled, a tiny quirk of lips that transformed his usually cold face. The tournament bracket will be announced soon. If we face each other, we'll both give everything, Izuku finished. As they parted, Bakugo intercepted him. Deku, Kaken, about using your quirk, shut up. But there was no heat in it. That thing you said, about feeling our hearts or whatever? That why you've always analyzed quirks so much? Izuku nodded slowly. Every quirk tells a story. Yours don't. Bakugo's hand clenched. Just don't. But in the tournament, you better not hold back. Use whatever quirk you need to face me at full power. It was permission and challenge combined. Bakugo walked away before Izuku could respond, leaving him to wonder at the complexity hidden beneath years of antagonism. The tournament bracket appeared on stadium screens. 16 competitors who'd advanced from the cavalry battle. Izuku traced the paths. If he won his matches, he'd face Todoroki in the semifinals, and if they both advanced, Bakugo waited in the finals. Nervous? Uraraka asked, appearing beside him. Terrified, Izuku admitted, then saw the bracket. Oh no. Uraraka, your first match is against Bakugo, she finished, face pale but determined. Guess I'd better start planning. The sports festival's final stage loomed before them. No more team strategies or borrowed mobility. Just one-on-one combat where Izuku's quirk would be both advantage and weakness. As crowds filed back to their seats for the tournament rounds, Izuku pulled out his notebook. Not his quirk analysis journal, but the new section Aizawa had inspired, Understanding Hearts. He had 16 competitors to face. 16 quirks that might need copying. But more importantly, 16 people whose stories were written in their power. The real challenge wasn't winning fights. It was carrying their burdens, even for just 5 minutes at a time. Ladies and gentlemen. Present Mick's voice boomed across the stadium. Get ready for the final stage of the sports festival. One-on-one tournaments where future heroes prove their worth. Izuku closed his notebook, adjusted his gloves, and prepared to face whatever came next. His quirk had brought him this far, not through power alone, but through understanding. Time to show the world what a useless quirk could do when wielded with empathy and strategy combined. The tournament was about to begin. The paper in Izuku's hands might as well have been blank. He sat in the classroom, staring at his internship offers while around him his classmates exclaimed over their options. Todoroki had dozens of agencies fighting for him. Bakugo's explosive performance had garnered similar attention. Even Uraraka, despite losing to Bakugo in the first round, had received several offers from rescue specialized heroes. Izuku had 3. Only 3? Uraraka peered over his shoulder, then quickly backpedaled. I mean, 3 is great. Quality over quantity, right? But Izuku could read the names, and more importantly, the types of agencies. One was a small outfit specializing in quirk counseling. They wanted to study him, not train him. The second was from a hero whose quirk involved copying appearances. They seemed to think there was synergy there. The third, Grand Torino? Izuku read aloud, frowning. I've never heard of him. Grand Torino? All Might, who'd been observing the class, suddenly choked on his tea. How did he even? You know him? Izuku asked. All Might's face cycled through several expressions before settling on forced calm. He's a retired hero. Very old school. Very particular about his teaching methods. That's one way to put it, Aizawa commented dryly from his sleeping bag. He trained All Might back in the day. The fact that he's interested in you, Midoriya. He didn't finish, but the implication hung heavy. Grand Torino knew about One for All. Knew about Izuku's connection to All Might. This wasn't really a choice at all. The rest of you have until end of day to submit your selections, Aizawa continued. Midoriya, stay after class. The dismissal bell rang, and students filtered out, chatting excitedly about their upcoming internships. Several threw sympathetic glances Izuku's way. They all knew why he had so few offers. When they were alone, Aizawa emerged from his sleeping bag like the world's most exhausted butterfly. 3 offers. Less than I expected, honestly. My quirk makes people nervous. Yes. Aizawa pulled out a tablet, showing rejection letters from various agencies. Edshot wrote that while your performance was impressive, the security risk of having someone who could copy his quirk was too great. Best Jeanist expressed concerns about proprietary techniques being replicated. Endeavor just wrote no and fire. Each rejection stung, but Izuku had expected this. It's the same as always. People see my quirk as theft. Some do. Aizawa scrolled further. But Red Hawk's response. Izuku leaned forward, reading the casual message. Kid's got potential, but I can't teach someone who might fly better than me after 5 minutes. My ego couldn't take it. Tell him to look me up after he's learned his own style. He's not wrong, Aizawa said. Your quirk creates a unique problem. Most heroes spend years perfecting their abilities. You can copy that perfection instantly, but without the foundation. It's like copying someone's handwriting without understanding the language, Izuku finished. Exactly. Which is why Grand Torino is perfect for you. Aizawa pulled up the hero's file. He doesn't rely on a single quirk or technique. He's pure fundamentals, strategy, and adaptation. Things that can't be copied. All Might seemed worried. All Might still has nightmares about his training. Aizawa almost smiled. Grand Torino doesn't believe in going easy. But if you survive, you'll come out stronger. If you survive. Comforting. One more thing, Aizawa added as Izuku stood to leave. The hero killer has been more active lately. 3 heroes attacked in the last week. Be careful during your internship. The hero killer. Stain? Izuku had notebooks full of analysis on the enigmatic villain. He targets heroes he deems false, right? Among other things. Just remember, your quirk might make you a target for different reasons than most. Someone who can copy abilities would be very valuable to certain people. The warning followed Izuku home, where his mother fussed over the internship forms with predictable anxiety. Only 3 offers? Inko wrung her hands. Maybe we should reconsider. Mom, it's okay. Grand Torino trained All Might. I'll be fine. But as he packed for the week-long internship, Izuku wondered if that was true. His performance at the sports festival had been a double-edged sword. He'd proven his quirk's versatility but also its threat. How many heroes saw him not as a potential colleague, but as someone who could undermine their entire identity with a touch? His phone buzzed with messages from classmates. Ida, I'll be interning with Manuel and Hosu. Perhaps we can meet up. Uraraka, Gunhead's agency accepted me. Time to learn some combat moves. Good luck with Grand Torino. Todoroki, my father insists I intern with him. We'll see how that goes. Be careful, Midoriya. Even Bakugo, best Jeanist better be worth it. Don't die to some old man, Deku. Support from unexpected places. Maybe the sports festival had changed more than just public perception. The address led Izuku to a rundown building in a quiet part of the city. Paint peeled from walls, and the sign reading Grand Torino was missing several letters. It looked abandoned. Izuku knocked hesitantly. Hello? Grand Torino? I'm Midoriya Izuku from UA. The door creaked open on its own. Inside was dimly lit, cluttered with what looked like decades of accumulated junk. And sprawled on the floor in a pool of suspicious red liquid was, he's dead. Izuku rushed forward, already pulling out his phone for emergency services. The body suddenly sat up. Dead? Who's dead? I'm just taking a nap, Izuku yelped, stumbling backward. The old man, Grand Torino, presumably, was tiny, ancient, with wild white hair and a costume that had seen better decades. You're the kid All Might sent? Grand Torino squinted at him. Scrawny. What's your name again? Midoriya Izuku, sir. Never heard of you. Grand Torino stood, revealing the red liquid was just spilled ketchup. What's your quirk? I can copy other quirks through physical contact for 5 minutes. Copy quirks? The old man's demeanor suddenly sharpened, years falling away. Show me. Before Izuku could respond, Grand Torino vanished. Air pressure slammed into Izuku's back, sending him flying into a wall. He hit hard, gasping, "Too slow." Grand Torino was already across the room, bouncing off walls like a pinball. "You touched me when I hit you. Why didn't you copy my quirk?" Izuku struggled to his feet. "I need skin contact, and I wasn't ready." Another impact, this time from the side. Izuku went down again, but this time his hand shot out, fingers finding the exposed skin of Grand Torino's ankle. Jet flooded through him. Not his legs like expected, but the soles of his feet, propulsion points that could fire compressed air. The quirk was simple but versatile, and Izuku immediately understood why Grand Torino moved like he did. "Better." Grand Torino nodded approvingly. "Now move!" Izuku activated Jet, shooting upward, and immediately crashed into the ceiling. He'd overcompensated, not used to the propulsion's force. "Sloppy. You're thinking too much." Grand Torino bounced around him, landing precise hits. "Your quirk gives you power without practice. That's your weakness." They sparred, if it could be called that when one fighter could barely stand. Every time Izuku thought he understood Jet, Grand Torino showed him a new application. Wall bouncing, aerial direction changes, using the propulsion for enhanced punches. After 5 minutes, the quirk faded. Izuku collapsed, exhausted and bruised. "Pathetic," Grand Torino announced, but his eyes held approval. "You copy the quirk but not the experience. Not the instinct. That's what we're fixing this week." "How?" "First, food. I'm starving." Grand Torino headed to the kitchen. "Make me some takoyaki." What? Takoyaki? The frozen kind is fine." The old man plopped down in front of a small TV. "And none of that modern microwave nonsense." Confused but obedient, Izuku found the ancient kitchen and began preparing food. As he cooked, Grand Torino called out commentary. "You analyze quirks, right? All Might mentioned your notebooks." "Yes, sir. I've studied hundreds of quirks, their applications and..." "Useless." Izuku nearly dropped the pan. "Sir, knowing and doing are different things." Grand Torino appeared in the doorway, moving silently despite his age. "You can copy my jet, but can you feel why I use it like I do? Can you sense the air currents, the angles, the split-second decisions?" "I know. Then your analysis means nothing." He returned to the TV. "Don't burn my takoyaki." That night, Izuku lay on a thin futon, body aching from impacts he'd barely seen coming. Grand Torino's words echoed, "Knowing and doing are different things." He'd always prided himself on understanding quirks intellectually. But Grand Torino was right. He copied power without instinct, ability without experience. How could he bridge that gap in just 1 week? The next morning came too soon, announced by Grand Torino bouncing on his futon. "Up. We're going out." They took a train to an abandoned warehouse district. Grand Torino had somehow gotten permission to use it for training, or maybe he just knew no one would check. "Your quirk is a crutch," Grand Torino announced. "You rely on copying others instead of developing yourself. Today, no copying. Just dodging." What followed was torture disguised as training. Grand Torino attacked relentlessly while Izuku dodged. No quirks, just human reflexes and pattern recognition. Every hit meant a failure to read the telegraphs, to understand the rhythm. By noon, Izuku could barely stand. But he was starting to see it. The way Grand Torino's shoulders shifted before attacking, how his breathing changed with different patterns. "Better," Grand Torino acknowledged. "Now we add complexity." He produced a bag of rubber balls. "Dodge these while fighting me." "That's impossible, is it?" Grand Torino started bouncing, throwing balls that ricocheted off walls at unpredictable angles. A hero faces multiple threats. Villains, debris, civilians. You can't copy your way out of everything. The afternoon was worse than the morning. Balls pelted Izuku from every angle while Grand Torino's attacks wove between them. But slowly, painfully, Izuku began to adapt. Not perfectly. He took plenty of hits. But his awareness expanded. "You're starting to get it," Grand Torino said as the sun set. "Quirks are tools, but the mind is what matters. Now, let's talk about yours specifically." They sat in the warehouse, Izuku grateful for the rest. "When you copy a quirk, what exactly happens?" Izuku had tried explaining this before, but Grand Torino listened differently than others. It's like downloading someone else's software. I get the program but not the user manual. Grand Torino pulled out a worn notebook of his own. All Might told me about your encounter with him. You copied one for all briefly? For maybe 10 seconds. It nearly killed me. Describe it. Izuku shuddered at the memory. Like trying to hold the ocean in a paper cup. The power was there, but my body couldn't channel it properly. I managed one finger flick before it faded. Interesting. Grand Torino made notes. And other quirks? Do they all feel equally foreign? No, actually. Izuku thought back. Some feel more natural. Kirishima's hardening was intuitive. But Todoroki's ice felt like trying to conduct an orchestra without knowing music, so compatibility varies. Grand Torino stood, pacing with energy that belied his age. Have you ever tried copying the same quirk multiple times? A few times, but Izuku paused. Something nagged at him. Wait. The second time usually feels easier, but I thought that was just familiarity. Or, Grand Torino suggested, your body remembers. They tested it immediately. Grand Torino let Izuku copy Jet again, and the difference was immediately apparent. His first attempt had been clumsy, but now his feet found the rhythm faster. He still crashed into walls, but less violently. Muscle memory, Grand Torino confirmed. Your quirk doesn't just copy, it learns. The more you use a specific quirk, the better you become with it. But I can only hold it for 5 minutes, each time. Grand Torino smiled, and it was slightly terrifying. But what if you copied the same quirk every day? Multiple times? Would your body build permanent memory? The implications were staggering. Izuku had always thought of his quirk as temporary, fleeting. But if he could build lasting compatibility, that's why you're having me dodge without quirks, Izuku realized. You're building my base capabilities so any quirk I copy has a better foundation. Smart kid. All Might said you were analytical. Grand Torino bounced to the warehouse door. Tomorrow we test this theory properly. Tonight you could dinner and study this. He tossed Izuku a file. Inside were detailed breakdowns of movement quirks, not just their abilities, but the physical mechanics behind them. Study how the body adapts to different movement types. Then we'll see if understanding improves your copying. That night, Izuku cooked. Grand Torino insisted on traditional dishes, claiming modern food made heroes soft, while absorbing the files. The information was dense: biomechanics, physics, even psychological profiles of movement quirk users. One profile caught his attention, a villain from decades ago whose quirk let him briefly copy physical movements he observed. Not quirks, just movements. He'd been caught because he could copy technique but not the strength behind it. Similar to Izuku's problem, but inverted. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Hero killer strikes again. Ingenium critically injured in Hosa City. Izuku's blood froze. Ingenium, Ida's brother. The hero Ida idolized above all others. He immediately texted Ida but got no response. Worry gnawed at him through dinner and into the night. Day 3 of internship started differently. We're going on patrol, Grand Torino announced, already in a slightly less ragged costume. Patrol? But I don't have a license. You have a provisional permission under my supervision. Besides, real experience beats warehouse training. They took a train toward Tokyo, Grand Torino explaining hero patrol basics between stops. Watch for unusual behavior, no escape routes. Always consider civilian safety first. Your quirk makes you valuable in unexpected situations, he said as they walked through a busy district. But it also makes you vulnerable. What happens if you copy a quirk you can't control? I've been lucky so far. Luck runs out. Grand Torino stopped at a takoyaki stand, ordering lunch. Have you considered what happens if you copy a mutation quirk? Or one that requires specific biology? Izuku hadn't. His experience was limited to emitter and transformation types. What if he touched someone like Tsuyu? Would he partially transform? Add it to your study list, Grand Torino said, reading his expression. A hero prepares for everything. They were heading back to the agency when Izuku's phone exploded with messages. All from classmates, all about the same thing. Hosa City is under attack. Noma's sightings. Multiple heroes responding. The hero killer was spotted. Grand Torino's demeanor changed instantly. Stay here, he ordered, then paused. No, you'll just find trouble alone. Come on. They caught an express train to Hosu, the trip tense with anticipation. Through the windows, Izuku could see smoke rising from the city center. Heroes rushed past when they arrived, heading towards sounds of combat. Nomu, Grand Torino spat. The League again. Stay close. An explosion rocked the station. In the chaos, Izuku was separated, pushed by fleeing civilians. By the time the crowd cleared, Grand Torino was gone. Izuku should have stayed put. Should have waited for rescue or backup. But his phone showed a location pin from Ida, sent minutes ago from an alley 6 blocks away. No message, just the location. He ran. The city was chaos. Heroes battled Nomu in the streets, while civilians fled. Izuku dodged debris and firefights, following his phone's GPS toward Ida's location. The main battle seemed concentrated downtown, but Ida's pin led to a quiet side street. Too quiet. Izuku slowed, instincts screaming danger. The alley ahead was dark, narrow. Perfect for an ambush. He pulled out his phone to call for help. A scream echoed from the alley. Ida's voice. Caution evaporated. Izuku sprinted into the darkness, finding a scene from nightmares. Ida was pinned against the wall, blood pooling beneath him. Standing over him was a figure in red, bandaged, armed, with eyes that burned with fanatic fervor, the hero killer. Stain. Another child playing hero, Stain said without turning. His voice was rough, contemptuous. Leave, or join the false hero in death. Ida? Izuku started forward, but Ida's eyes widened in panic. Don't move! Ida gasped. His quirk, if he ingests your blood, paralysis. Stain finally turned, studying Izuku with interest. You're not in costume. Not a real hero yet. Leave, boy. This doesn't concern you. You're wrong. Izuku's voice shook, but he stood firm. Heroes help people who need it. That's all that matters. Pretty words. Stain drew a knife, the blade already stained red. Let's see if you believe them. He moved faster than anyone that size should. Izuku barely dodged the first strike, Grand Torino's training saving his life. The second cut his cheek, drawing blood. Stain's tongue flicked out, tasting the blood on his blade. Izuku felt his muscles lock, paralysis spreading instantly. Disappointing, Stain said, turning back to Ida. Another fake hero, all talk, and Izuku copied the quirk. The moment Stain's tongue touched the blood, Izuku felt blood curdle flood through him. It was unlike any quirk he'd copied, not just power, but purpose. The ability to judge worth through blood, to paralyze those found wanting. And with it came understanding. You're not a villain, Izuku said, fighting through his own paralysis. Copying the quirk didn't free him, but it gave him insight. You're a broken hero. Stain froze. What? Your quirk, it's not just paralysis. Izuku could feel it now, the weight Stain carried. It judges. Evaluates. You taste someone's blood and know their heart. That's why some people break free faster. Their heroic spirit resists. Shut up. You've tasted hundreds of heroes' blood. Felt their greed, their vanity, their false motivations. Izuku's fingers twitched. The paralysis was wearing off faster than it should. It broke you. Feeling all that corruption, that betrayal of ideals. Shut up. Stain lunged, but Izuku could move again. Barely, sluggishly, but enough to roll aside. His hand found Ida's arm. An engine roared to life in his arms. You know what I didn't feel in your blood. Izuku stood, engines warming. Corruption. You believe in your twisted way. You're trying to save Heroes Society by culling the false. Then you understand. I understand you're wrong. Izuku's engines reached full power. Heroes are human. Flawed. Some seek fame or money. But they still save lives. That matters more than pure intentions. He rocketed forward, using Ida's quirk in ways his friend couldn't, arms instead of legs, unpredictable angles. Stain, surprised by the novel application, barely deflected. They fought through the alley, Izuku cycling between blood-curdless insight and engine's power. He couldn't win. Stain was too experienced, but he could buy time. Your quirk is interesting, Stain admitted, dodging an engine-powered punch. Copying others, you must feel their hearts too, every time. Izuku panted, engine fading. That's why I know heroes are worth protecting. Perfect or not, naive child, fire erupted between them. Todoroki stood at the alley entrance, left side blazing. Midoriya. Ida. I'm here. The battle shifted. Todoroki's ice and fire created space while Izuku checked on Ida. The paralysis was wearing off, but his injuries were severe. Why? Ida gasped. This was my fight. My revenge, because you're my friend. Izuku helped him sit up. And heroes help friends. How touching, Stain snarled, but he was struggling now. Todoroki's range kept him at bay while Izuku protected Ida. Then Stain did something unexpected. He bit his own tongue, drawing blood, and swallowed. What? Todoroki started. His own blood, Izuku realized. He's judging himself. Stain's eyes went wide, then focused with terrifying intensity. The paralysis self-application had done something, freed him, or damned him. He moved like death itself, blades singing through Todoroki's defenses. Ice shattered, fire dispersed. In seconds he was on them. Izuku pushed Ida aside, taking a blade meant for his friend. It pierced his shoulder, sending agony through him. But as Stain leaned in to lick the blade, Izuku grabbed his face. Skin contact. Blood could have flooded through him again, but stronger. He was copying an enhanced version. Stain's quirk turned on himself. You want to judge? Izuku gasped through pain. Then feel this. He bit his own tongue, tasting his blood mixed with Stain's quirk. The world exploded into sensation, not just his own heart, but echoes of everyone he'd copied. Bakugo's anger and pride, Todoroki's pain and determination, Ida's grief and justice, Uraraka's hope, All Might's fading light, and Stain felt it too, their connected quirks creating a feedback loop. The hero killer stumbled back, eyes wide with something like awe. You carry them all, every quirk, every heart. Izuku stood despite his injuries. That's what heroes do. We carry others. Ingenious! A new voice boomed. But this ends now. Grand Torino descended like a meteor, jet-powered kicks sending Stain flying. Other heroes arrived, Native, Endeavor, Manual. The scene became chaos again, but controlled. As medics treated their injuries and police secured Stain, the hero killer spoke one last time. Boy. Midoriya. His eyes found Izuku's. You're the real thing. You and All Might. The rest are pretenders. You're wrong, Izuku said softly. They're all real. Just human. Stain smiled, a broken, sad thing. Then prove it. Show them what true heroism looks like. He was taken away, leaving 3 injured students and a crowd of pro-heroes who'd arrived too late. The hospital room was crowded. Ida in one bed, Izuku in another, Todoroki sitting between them with minor injuries. Grand Torino paced while Endeavor loomed and Manual fretted. You 3 broke approximately 12 laws, the police chief, Surigami, said. His dog-like features were stern. Using quirks without licenses, engaging a villain, vigilantism. They saved lives, Grand Torino interrupted. Which is why this will be covered up, woof. The chief's expression softened slightly. Officially, Endeavor defeated Stain. You 3 were never there. But Ida started. No arguments, woof. Be grateful you're not expelled. After the officials left, the 3 students sat in silence. Midoriya, Ida finally spoke. What you did, copying Stain's quirk, I had to understand him. To find a way to counter him. Izuku touched his bandaged shoulder. Every quirk tells a story. His was about disappointment and twisted idealism. You felt what he felt, Todoroki said. It wasn't a question, for 5 minutes. But that was enough to know he wasn't pure evil. Just broken. He hurt my brother. Ida's voice cracked. Nearly killed him, yes. And that's unforgivable. Izuku met his eyes. But understanding doesn't mean agreeing. I felt his pain, but I also felt why he was wrong. Your quirk, Todoroki mused. It's not just copying. It's empathy made manifest. Empathy with a time limit, Izuku corrected wryly. They talked through the night, about quirks, heroism, the weight of legacy. Ida apologized for his revenge quest. Todoroki admitted he'd used his fire more freely when fighting beside them. Izuku shared his discovery about muscle memory and repeated copying. So if you copied our quirks regularly, Ida began, I'd become more proficient each time. Izuku nodded. Grand Torino thinks I could build permanent compatibility with certain quirks. Then we should train together, Todoroki said simply. All of us. If your quirk lets you understand us better, and helps us see our abilities differently, everyone benefits. It was the beginning of something. Not just friendship, but partnership. The last 2 days of internship were different. Grand Torino pushed harder, but with new purpose. You've discovered something most heroes never learn, he said as they trained. Power means nothing without understanding. Your quirk forces you to experience that literally. Stain knew that too, in his way, which is why he was so dangerous. Grand Torino had Izuku copying Jet repeatedly, building that muscle memory. Fanatics often start with truth before twisting it. Sir, do you think I did the right thing? Copying his quirk? Grand Torino paused his bouncing. What do you think? I don't know. I understood him, but that understanding came from violating his quirk. Using it against him. And maybe that's what heroism requires sometimes. Getting dirty to save lives. Izuku activated Jet, managing a controlled bounce between walls. But it still feels wrong. Good. The day it stops feeling wrong is the day you stop being a hero. Grand Torino resumed his assault. Now move! We have 2 days to make this muscle memory permanent. They trained until Izuku collapsed each night. But by the final day, he could use Jet almost instinctively for the full 5 minutes. Not as well as Grand Torino. Decades of experience couldn't be replicated, but competently. You'll need to do this with every quirk you want to master, Grand Torino said as they packed up the agency. Daily copying, building compatibility. It's a long road, but worth it, that depends on you. The old hero handed him a wrapped package. A gift. Don't open it until you're back at UA. The train ride back to school was quiet. Izuku's shoulder ached despite healing, a permanent reminder of Hosu. His phone held messages from classmates, checking in after hearing vague reports of the incident. But it was All Might who met him at the station, looking haggard. Young Midoriya. I heard about Hosu. I'm fine. No. You're not. All Might's hands shook slightly. You faced the hero killer. Copied his quirk. Felt his madness, and survived, this time. All Might sighed, seeming to shrink. I wanted to protect you from the darker sides of heroism. But your quirk makes that impossible. Every villain you face, you'll understand. Feel their pain, their motivations. Is that bad? It's dangerous. Empathy for villains can lead to hesitation. Or worse, agreement. Izuku thought of Stain's broken idealism, of tasting hero corruption through blood. Maybe. But understanding is how we stop them. Not just physically, but addressing what creates them. All Might studied him for a long moment. You're growing up too fast. My quirk doesn't give me a choice. They walked together toward UA, teacher and student, both carrying weights the other could only partially understand. Back in his dorm, Izuku opened Grand Torino's gift. Inside was a notebook, worn, yellowed with age. The first page had a note. This was All Might's during his training. He documented every quirk he studied, every technique he mastered. You'll need your own version. Remember, quirks are people. Treat them with respect, even when you must use them against their wielders. GT. Izuku flipped through pages of young All Might's handwriting, seeing the evolution from student to hero. Then he pulled out a fresh notebook and began his own documentation. Quirk Muscle Memory Log Day 1. Jet Grand Torino 15 repetitions over 5 days. Noticeable improvement in control and instinct. Can maintain stable flight for full duration. Bloodcurdle, Stain 2 uses in combat. Do not want to repeat, but the insight was valuable. Note, some quirks carry psychological weight that persists after copying ends. Be careful. Next goals, build memory with classmates' quirks through consensual practice. Focus on versatile abilities that complement base combat skills. He wrote until dawn, planning a future where his useless quirk became something more. Not just copying, but understanding. Not just borrowing power, but building bridges between hearts. The internship was over, but the real training had just begun.